All right, guys. So far, working in OnShape, we have only really worked in Part Studio tabs. We haven't worked in any other type of tab. Another type of tab that we are going to be using a lot in multiple projects that we are going to be doing later on this year is the Assembly tab. So we're going to get started working on assemblies today, and you are going to complete, some practice exercises as always related to assemblies. So the first thing I want you guys to do is just make a new Part Studio tab in your OnShape document and rename it Lesson 4. Just so we have everything named and labeled. What you are also going to do is make sure your workspace units are in millimeters, just to stay consistent with what we've been doing. And in the Assembly tab, like I said, we've really only been working in Part Studio tabs. In the Assembly tab, I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And to add an Assembly tab, you just click the Add Tab button, and then you can press Create Assembly. But in this tab, it allows you to insert all, parts or components needed to create a complete product. So a lot of times in the Part Studio tab, we just create, different pieces of a project or different pieces of a product, and then we put them together in the Assembly tab. So if you don't already have an Assembly tab, go ahead and create an assembly and then rename that Assembly tab Lesson 4 Assembly, just so we have everything nicely labeled. Another thing that you can do in the Assembly tab is use it to test out any moving parts within your product and ensure your design is behaving correctly and as you intended it to behave. So for the catapult project, for example, we'll create an assembly of the catapult, and then we can actually test the movement of the catapult arm to see, if it works properly before we actually go ahead and build it. But right now, if I were to click Insert, we don't have any parts available to pull into this Assembly tab. So we actually need to go into, our Part Studio tab and create some parts that we wish to assemble. So we're just going to stick with something super simple today. We're going to create a 1-peg Lego brick to use to practice to create an assembly. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to create a new sketch on the top plane and look at it from the top. I'm going to make a center point rectangle starting at the origin. That is 100 millimeters by 100 millimeters, something simple. I'm going to go to isometric view, and I'm going to extrude that square up 100 millimeters. And hit the green check. And before we move any farther, we have a new part here, so you always want to rename those. I'm going to name it Lego Brick A, and you'll see why we're naming it that in a few minutes. Now I need to create my peg, so I'm going to make a new sketch on the top, not the top plane, but on the top of my cube, so it says face of extrude 1. Now look at it from the top. I'm going to make a center point circle starting at the origin for our peg with a diameter of 40 millimeters. Go to isometric view, and I'm going to extrude that circle up also 40 millimeters. Keep it consistent. Okay, so now we have our pseudo 1-peg Lego brick. It's not perfect, but it'll get the job done for what we need to create. But if you know anything about Legos, there's also like holes on the bottom for you to be able to put a peg into. So that's what we're going to create next, because we want the Legos to be able to be assembled together. So I'm going to make a new sketch on the bottom of our cube. So I'm going to look at it from the very bottom. It should say face of extrude 1, but it is the bottom. I'm going to make another center point circle starting at the origin, and that's going to be 40 millimeters. Now, if we were doing this or creating these in real life, we might need to make, the hole a little bit larger to make sure that the peg can fit in properly. But for this, it's totally fine. And then I'm going to look at it from isometric view. I'm going to press extrude. I'm going to click remove. And I want that to be extruded up also 40 millimeters. And hit the green check. Now if I take a look underneath, I have my hole for my Lego brick. So to help us in our assembly, we're going to create a second Lego brick. So I'm just going to click on Lego brick A and 2-finger click on the part. And I should have an option. Let's see. It may not let me do it. Let's try going this way. Yeah. So I'm just going to come over to the parts list and 2-finger click on Lego brick A and press copy. And then I'm going to pull my copy away from the existing part. I don't care how far away it is. It doesn't need to be anything specific. And hit the green check. And now we have a part 2. I'll rename part 2 Lego brick B. And now just to make things easier, I'm going to change the colors so we can tell the difference. So I'll edit the appearance. I'll make, let's try purple. And this one, let's make a lighter purple. That works. I like that. You can make them any color, obviously, that you want. And now we have our 2 Lego bricks. And we're ready to start our assembly. So you're going to click on the Assembly tab named Lesson 4 Assembly. And the first step is to insert the parts you wish to assemble. So I'm going to press Insert. And sometimes you don't have this drop-down caret clicked when you first click Insert. If I just chose to click this, Lesson 4, it would bring everything in that Part Studio tab in. I like for you guys, to click things individually to bring in to the document or to the tab. You can also bring in things from other documents, but, we're always probably going to be working with the current document. So I'm going to bring in Lego Brick A. If I click on it, and I bring my mouse into the workspace, it plops right in, and I can just drop it down anywhere. And now it's in the workspace. Before we bring in Lego Brick B, I'm just going to hit the green check to start. Right now we have this, oriented in the correct way, quote unquote, if we were making a Lego tower. But before you assemble anything, if you need to, rotate or move or do anything for the part, you can double click on the part and it brings up all these movement and rotation handles. And you can go ahead and move or rotate the part. This can get tricky if you keep doing this, just because a lot of times, see, look, I can move it 32.936 degrees. And that could be tricky to kind of align with other parts. So you want to make sure that you kind of just stick to like 90, 180, 270 degrees so that, nothing kind of moves too much. If you need to flip the part for any reason, you grab a different rotation handle. And you guys get the idea. I'm just going to put that back at 0 and we're good to go. Once you have it angled correctly, we can choose to fix the part down to where it is positioned in the workspace. You always want the first part you bring in to be fixed. That just helps, when you're moving a bunch of parts, you never kind of get out of square. And this will make more sense once we start engineering drawing. So I'm going to 2-finger click on the part, or control click, and press fix. And now if I try to move this for any reason, I can't move it. And you see that this symbol comes up to say that the part is fixed. And that's what I want. Okay, so now that the first part is fixed, I'm going to insert Lego brick B and drop it down and hit the green check. Now we don't have to fix Lego brick B because we're going to end up putting it on top of Lego brick A. And we can start assembling, or what OnShape calls it, mating the pieces together. So OnShape uses mate connectors to attach different parts to each other, almost like using glue or screws or nails in real life. They just call them mate connectors. And essentially a mate connector are points located on different parts that are used to join those two parts together in a specific place. Sometimes OnShape suggests mate connectors to use. So like right now it's suggesting different mate connectors to use when I just clicked on that icon. But a lot of times we need to create custom mate connectors. So I want to make sure that, I show you how to do that before moving on. Okay, so we want to place Lego brick B, which is my lighter purple Lego, on top of Lego brick A. So I'm going to create a custom mate connector. So I'm going to click the mate connector icon. It's just looks like kind of like a Pac-Man. And I don't need to change any of these settings, but I want to put a mate connector in the center of this peg here. So I want a mate connector there so I can attach the other Lego on top. And now I'm going to hit the green check. And now you see that mate connector is there. And we are able to use it. The next thing I'm going to do is make another mate connector. And I'm actually going to rotate to the bottom of my shape. And I need a mate connector on the very top of the inside of the hole. Okay, on my other Lego brick. So we don't want it on the bottom opening of the hole. We actually want it on the inside of the hole. And if I kind of cycle around and I look at it from the side, I know that that's on the inside. And then I'm going to hit the green check there, and I'll go back to isometric view. So now we have the mate connectors we need, and there are different mate types to choose from. You'll see if you scroll over them. We use fasten mates a lot. A fasten mate cannot move, it's fixed in position. So think again, like glue, nail, screws. You can't move it, you can't animate it, which is adding motion to it. It's just permanently fixed together. There's also something called a revolute mate. We're mating two entities, allowing for rotational movement along an axis. So think if you're trying to recreate a door hinge, or if you're opening a box. A lot of times when you're modeling hinges, we would use a revolute mate. And then we also have a slider mate. So you're mating two entities, allowing for translational movement or sliding movement along an axis. So if we're thinking like the pump of a soap dispenser, kind of pressing down, you would use a slider mate for that. And there are many, many others. Those are just, the most common that we use. But for this, since we want our Legos to be fixed together, we are going to be using a fasten mate. So I'm going to click fasten mate. And now it wants me to select the mate connectors I wish to fix together. So I want this mate connector fastened to this mate connector. And then you'll see that our two Lego bricks were positioned on each other. Now, when you have, your mate connector open, you have the option to flip your primary axis. Sometimes you need to do this depending on how your parts are oriented. You can also rotate your part. Right now it doesn't look like my part's rotating because it's just a square, but sometimes you need to do that. If you hit the green check, we have this fixed. It automatically creates a fasten to. We don't need a fasten to, so you can just hit the green check. And now we have our parts mated together, but you can still see those mate connectors inside there. And when we're creating something super complex, you kind of want to hide these after you use them. So if you come over to your mate features, you just hit the eye and you're able to hide the mate connector. And now we have our two Legos permanently fixed onto each other and fastened onto each other. If we need to make a change to our part after we assemble, we can go back into our Part Studio tab and make a change. So don't do this. I'm just going to show you this quickly. I'm just going to drill a random hole into this Lego. So you don't have to do that. I just want to show you. So I made a change here. Now if I come over here, the change is represented. Okay, so just because you've assembled something doesn't mean it is completely unchangeable. And now if I go back and undo what I just did, it looks just as normal. So to practice on your own right now, I want you to add another brick A to the stack and then add another brick B to your stack. So at the end of this practice, you should have 4 bricks stacked together using the Fasten Mate tool in the Assembly tab.